Tonight, I'm gonna tell you a story that'll make you wanna check your locks, close your curtains, and sleep with the lights on, because this isn't just a scary story. This actually happened. People think that the scariest things live outside, that if you lock your doors, you're safe. But what if the real danger wasn't out there? What if it was already inside, watching you, listening, waiting for the perfect moment to make itself known? This is the real story of Daniel LaPlante, a man who didn't just stalk his victims, he lived among them. It all started in 1986, in a quiet little town called Townsend, Massachusetts, a place where nothing bad ever happened. Or at least, that's what people thought. Annie Andrews was 16 years old, and she was grieving. Her mom had just died of cancer, and her life felt empty. It was just her little sister Jessica, and their dad, struggling to hold everything together. And then, one night, the phone rang. A boy introduced himself as Danny, said he got her number from a mutual friend. He sounded nice, friendly, kind of awkward but in a sweet way, and most importantly, he understood her pain. He told her his mom had also passed away, and he knew what it felt like to be alone. They started talking every night, and Annie finally felt like someone got her. Weeks passed, then one night, Danny asked if they could meet in person. Annie was nervous but excited. She had built up this picture in her head, a tall, blonde, athletic guy with a soft smile. So when she finally opened the door and saw who was standing there, her stomach dropped. Danny was nothing like he had described. He was short, pale, greasy dark hair clinging to his face, and his eyes, something about his eyes wasn't right. They were too wide, too intense. Like he was memorizing her. Annie couldn't take it. She made up an excuse to end the date early, and after that, she stopped answering his calls. She thought that was the end of it, but Danny wasn't done with her. Not even close. Annie tried to forget about him. She blocked his number, ignored the phone when it rang late at night, and told herself it was just one bad date, just a weird, awkward guy she'd never have to see again. But then, strange things started happening in the house. At first, it was small, easy to ignore. Things weren't where she left them. A hairbrush that should have been on her dressing table was suddenly in the bathroom sink. A book she wrote was on her desk, but ended up under her bed. Jessica started noticing it too. "Did you move my teddy bear?" she asked one night, holding up the stuffed animal their mom had given her before she passed. Annie shook her head. No, but she didn't think much of it. Maybe Jessica just forgot where she put it. But the weirdness didn't stop. The TV would turn on in the middle of the night, just static hissing through the screen. But their dad blamed the faulty wiring, saying, "Old house problems." And then there was the closet. Annie had a habit every night before bed. She made sure her closet door was completely shut, a little quirk she'd had since she was a kid, but lately, she'd wake up to find it slightly open. Not wide open, just a few inches, enough to make her stomach twist, enough to make her question herself. Her dad brushed it off, saying she was just distracted, stressed from losing her mom. Maybe she and Jessica were just misplacing things, so she let it go, tried not to think about it, until the knocking started. At first, it was faint, just soft taps against the walls, always at night, always when she was alone in her room. She told herself it was nothing. Houses creak, right, old pipes, maybe even mice in the walls. But then, one night, she heard it inside her walls. It wasn't just random noise, it was deliberate, a slow rhythmic knocking coming from the space behind her bedroom wall. Annie froze, her skin prickling with fear. She held her breath, listening, waiting for it to happen again. And then, she heard something worse, a whisper, like someone was speaking through the walls, calling her name. She strained to hear, but it was too quiet to make out the words. Her heart pounded in her ears. No, she was just being paranoid. It's just the wind, just her mind playing tricks. But the next night, it happened again, the knocks, slow and steady, and this time she was sure she heard it. A giggle. It was faint, but there. Someone was in the walls. She wanted to scream, but her throat locked up. She scrambled out of bed, ran straight to her dad's room, but when she told him, he just sighed, said she was stressed, overtired, imagining things. But Annie knew, deep down, something wasn't right, and soon, she'd find out just how wrong things really were. Annie tried to push it out of her mind, pretend the sounds weren't real, that it was all just stress, just grief messing with her head. But deep down, she knew something was wrong, and it wasn't just her anymore. One night, Jessica came running into Annie's room, eyes wide, breathing heavy, and she whispered, "I heard it too." She swallowed hard, her voice was shaking, and said, "Someone laughed." Annie's stomach dropped. She wasn't imagining it. This was real. They were curled up on the couch, trying to distract themselves with some dumb sitcom, but neither of them was really watching. And then, bang, a loud crash echoed from upstairs. Jessica yelped. Annie's whole body tensed. They turned to look at each other, and their faces were mirroring the same thought. We're supposed to be alone. Annie stood up slowly. "It's probably nothing," she whispered, but even as she said it, she knew she was lying. Jessica grabbed her wrist. "Don't go up there," but Annie had to know. She grabbed the heaviest thing she could find and crept toward the stairs. Each step creaked under her weight, the sound impossibly loud in the silence. Her heart was racing. She reached the hallway. It was empty, but then she saw it. Her bedroom door was open. She was sure she had closed it. She stepped inside, and her breath caught in her throat. Her room was a mess. Her drawers were pulled open, her clothes thrown onto the floor, her bed covers half ripped off. It looked like someone had been in here, or someone was still in here. And then, a noise came from the closet. Annie turned slowly. The closet door was cracked open. Her hand shook as she reached for it. And then, bang, the door flew open, but there was nothing inside, just her clothes swaying softly, as if something had just been there. Her stomach turned. She felt watched. She grabbed Jessica's hand, and they ran, straight out the front door, straight to the neighbor's house. They refused to go back inside until their dad came home, and when he did, he was pissed. He stormed upstairs, checked every room, every corner. Nothing was missing, nothing was broken. "It's just your imagination," he snapped. "I don't want to hear about this again." Annie wanted to argue, but what was the point? Her dad wouldn't believe them, even though the truth was right in front of him, because what none of them knew was that this wasn't over, not even close. The real horror, it was just beginning. That night, Annie lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. No matter how much she wanted to believe her dad, she knew what she saw. The mess in her room wasn't just her being careless. The open closet door wasn't just some trick of memory. Something was inside the house. She kept telling herself it was over, that whoever had been there was gone now, but deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was still being watched. Every time she closed her eyes, she swore she could feel something standing just beyond her vision, waiting. Hours passed, and then the knocking started again. This time, it was different. It wasn't just coming from inside the walls anymore. It was closer, louder, more deliberate. The sound moved, first against one wall, then another, then the ceiling above her bed, and then something shifted in the darkness. It was subtle, barely noticeable. But Annie saw it, the faintest sliver of movement, right near her closet door, the same door she had made sure was shut, but now it was cracked open again. The room felt heavier, the air thick and unmoving. Every instinct in her body screamed at her to not look, to keep her eyes on the ceiling and pretend she hadn't noticed. But she did, and that's when she saw it, through the tiny gap in the closet. There was an eye, not wide and wild like in horror movies, just calm, watching, waiting. She couldn't breathe, she couldn't move, she just lay there, frozen, as the eye slowly blinked, and then disappeared into the darkness. For what felt like forever, there was nothing, and then the closet door creaked open just an inch more. Annie didn't scream, she didn't run, because in that moment, she knew, if she moved, if she acknowledged it, it would be real. So she stayed perfectly still, heart hammering in her chest, listening to the quiet rustle of movement from inside her closet, and then The breathing started, slow, steady, not hers. Not Jessica's, something else, something inside the walls, something that had been there all along. The morning after that sleepless night, Annie couldn't shake the feeling of something still lingering in her room. It wasn't just paranoia. It was something deeper, something primal, that unsettling awareness that she was being watched. Jessica noticed it too. She wasn't talking much, just avoiding eye contact and keeping close. It was clear she felt it, even if she wasn't saying anything. The day passed in a blur. The house felt wrong, like it had been violated. Annie kept catching glimpses of things out of the corner of her eyeshadows, shifting where there shouldn't be movement. Objects feeling slightly out of place, like someone had touched them. The worst part was the air. It was different, heavier, thick with something unspoken, something unseen. By the time night fell, the exhaustion was catching up to her, but she didn't want to sleep. The thought of lying in that bed again, under that same ceiling, waiting for something to happen, made her stomach churn. But she had no choice, so she forced herself under the covers, forced herself to shut her eyes. At first, everything was still, but then the noises started again, not the knocking, not the breathing. Something worse. It was the sound of movement, but not footsteps, something dragging, like fabric sliding against the floor, or skin against wood, slow, methodical crawling. She couldn't move, she couldn't breathe. Then the closet door creaked just an inch, just enough to let the darkness seep out. Her eyes darted toward it, but nothing was there, not yet. The air grew colder, heavier, the feeling of presence so strong it was suffocating. And then the bed shifted, not much, just a slight dip, a barely, their pressure, but it was enough to tell her that something, someone, was now in the room with her, not outside, not in the walls. Inside, right there. She wanted to scream, wanted to run, but her body refused to move. Something was at the foot of her bed, waiting, watching, and the worst part, it wasn't alone. Annie could feel it, that shift in the air, that awful, suffocating pressure that told her she wasn't alone. She knew that feeling now. She had felt it in her bed before. She had felt it when she saw that eye peeking from the closet. And now, it was worse. She wasn't imagining it. Something was at the foot of her bed, and it was waiting. The room was silent, too silent, the kind of silence that wasn't natural, the kind of silence that felt like something was holding its breath, just like she was. She didn't dare move. She wanted to convince herself it was nothing, that she was overreacting, but then the bed shifted again. This time, it was deliberate, not just a tiny dip in the mattress, a real, noticeable movement. Like something was adjusting its position, like something was getting closer. Annie squeezed her eyes shut. She could feel the weight at the end of the bed, heavy, solid. It wasn't just there, it was crawling toward her. Slow, controlled, like it didn't want her to notice. The blankets felt like they were growing tighter around her body, like something was pressing down, trapping her. Then, a hand, she felt it. Not brushing against her, not barely there. It pressed against her leg, fingers curling, testing the fabric of her pajama pants. It wasn't a ghost, it wasn't some shadowy nightmare. It was real, flesh. Bone, warmth, a person, right there. She wanted to scream, to thrash, to do something, but then the hand moved higher. She yanked her legs back so hard that she nearly fell off the bed. Her breath came out in a sharp gasp, loud, too loud. The pressure at the foot of the bed vanished. The weight lifted. The room was still again, but not empty. She knew it wasn't empty. She forced herself to move, her whole body trembling as she slowly sat up. Her eyes darted toward the foot of the bed. Nothing but the closet door. It was open again, wider, and the air coming from inside was different, cold, stale, like something had been hiding there for a long, long time. And that's when Annie heard it, not breathing, not knocking, a whisper, not loud, not clear, but there, just a faint, almost playful murmur from inside the closet, a sound that sent a chill down her spine because it told her one thing. It was never just watching, it was waiting, waiting for the right moment, and tonight, It had gotten too close. Annie sat frozen, her entire body drenched in cold sweat. The whisper from inside the closet still echoed in her ears, but she couldn't tell what it had said. It didn't matter. The fact that it was there at all, that she had heard it, was enough. She wanted to run, wanted to get out of that room and never come back, but the problem was, it was already inside. There was no escaping it. She forced herself to move. Slowly, carefully, her hand reached for the bedside lamp. She didn't even care if Jessica woke up. She just needed light. Her fingers barely brushed the switch when a thump, not loud, not dramatic, just a single small sound coming from the closet. Her hand froze. The kind of fear she felt now wasn't like before. This wasn't just paranoia. This wasn't just the fear of the unknown. This was primal terror, because that sound, it wasn't random, it wasn't accidental. It was intentional, like it knew she was awake, like it wanted her to hear it. A second thump. Closer this time, Annie's chest tightened. Her body begged her to run, to do anything but just sit there. But she couldn't move. She wasn't sure what was worse. The fact that something was definitely in the closet, or the realization that if it had been hiding in there all this time, then how many nights had it been watching her? The thought made her stomach twist. It was playing with her, every night a little closer. The whisper, the closet slowly opening, the sensation of a hand gripping her leg. It was testing her, seeing how far it could go before she reacted. And tonight, it wanted her to know. Her breath hitched as a new sound filled the room, a soft, dragging noise, like bare feet sliding against the wooden floor. The closet door wasn't just open now. It was moving, not fast, not sudden, slow, like whatever, was inside was crawling out, and then the air changed the same way it had before. That heavy, suffocating pressure that made it feel like she wasn't just being watched anymore. She was being approached. She didn't think, didn't even process what she was doing. Her hand slammed against the lamp switch. Light flooded the room, and just like that, the noise stopped. Annie's entire body was trembling as she forced herself to look at the closet. Wide open now, completely, but there was nothing inside, just clothes, shoes, the usual, and yet, she knew she hadn't imagined it. Something had been there, and now it was somewhere else, somewhere in the house. Annie sucked in a shaky breath, glancing at Jessica, still asleep, still unaware of what had just happened. She wanted to wake her, wanted to tell her everything, but what if that was exactly what it wanted? What if the moment she turned away, the moment she let her guard down, it would come back? Annie didn't sleep after that. She just sat there, waiting, listening, because even though the house was silent now, she knew one thing for certain. This wasn't over, not even close. Annie sat in bed, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. The lamp was on, the closet was wide open, and Jessica was still asleep, completely unaware of the nightmare unfolding right beside her. But Annie knew. She knew something had been in that closet. She felt it, she heard it, and the worst part, she knew it wasn't gone. It had just moved somewhere in the house. The thought sent a fresh wave of terror through her veins. The entire house felt different now. The walls felt thinner, the air felt wrong, like it wasn't really her house anymore, like she wasn't alone. She stared at the closet, wide open, and gritted her teeth. She wanted to believe she had imagined it, that it was all just her mind playing tricks on her, but she couldn't, because she still felt it. That horrible, suffocating weight of being watched. She turned her head slowly, scanning the room. Nothing. Just Jessica, curled up under her blanket, breathing softly, and yet, the fear didn't go away because deep down Annie knew, whatever was in that closet, it hadn't left the house, it was hiding. Waiting, the thought of staying in that bed, in that room, for even another second made her feel sick. She had to move, had to get out of there. Carefully, she pulled back the blanket and swung her legs over the side of the bed. Every movement felt dangerous, like she was inches away from something watching, waiting for her to slip up. Her bare feet touched the cold floor. She waited. Nothing happened. She took a breath and stood up, every muscle in her body screaming at her to run. But she didn't. She needed to be quiet. She glanced back at Jessica one last time, debating whether to wake her up. But how would she even explain this? How do you tell someone that there was a whisper in the closet? That something crawled out and sat at the foot of your bed, that you felt fingers on your leg? She turned away and took a slow step toward the door, then another. The floor creaked under her weight. She froze. The silence in the room suddenly felt louder, like it was stretching, waiting, like something was listening. Annie's pulse hammered in her ears. She held her breath, staring at the doorway. Nothing. She moved again. Step after step, inching toward the hallway. She reached for the door handle and turned it slowly, careful not to make a sound. The door opened with a faint creak, and she stepped out into the hallway. It was dark, darker than it should have been. The whole house felt wrong, empty, but not in a safe way, in a trapped way, like she wasn't leaving the room, like she was walking into something else's space. She took another step, her bare feet making almost no sound against the wooden floor. The hallway stretched in front of her, pitch black except for the faint glow of a nightlight from the bathroom down the hall. And that's when she noticed it. The air was colder, way too cold for a summer night. Her breath came out in a shaky puff, visible in the dim light. And that's when it hit her. The air was moving, like a breeze. But that didn't make sense. The windows were closed, the doors were locked. There was no draft. So why did it feel like something had just brushed past her? She swallowed hard, every nerve in her body screaming at her to turn back. But she didn't, because just as she was about to step forward, she heard it, a footstep right behind her, not an echo, not a creak, a single deliberate step. She felt the floorboards shift behind her. Someone was right there. She didn't turn around. She couldn't, because deep down she knew. If she turned around, she would see something she wasn't supposed to. Something that had been waiting in the dark this whole time. Annie didn't move. Her entire body was frozen in place, every instinct screaming at her to run, to fight, to do something. But she couldn't, because whatever was behind her, it was waiting. She could feel it. Not just the presence, but the weight of its stare, that awful, unbearable feeling of being watched, not from across the room, not from behind a door, but right there, so close she could feel its breath. She wanted to turn around, wanted to see what was standing behind her, but she knew, deep down, she knew if she looked, she wouldn't be able to unsee it, and maybe that was part of the game. Maybe it wanted her to break first, to be the one who couldn't take it anymore, because then it would know she was weak. She had to fight every urge in her body, every instinct that begged her to turn and run. Instead, she focused on her breathing. Slow, controlled, she had to think. What did it want? It had been hiding in the closet, watching her for who knows how long. It whispered to her, touched her, and now it was standing behind her, not attacking. Not speaking, just waiting, as if it was toying with her. Annie clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms. She forced herself to take a slow step forward, her bare foot making the softest sound on the wooden floor. The moment she moved, the air changed, the presence shifted, and then a sound, not a whisper, not a creak, not a breath, but something far worse. A low, slow chuckle, not loud, not human, like a dry, rasping voice from the bottom of a deep well. It wasn't laughing, it was mocking her. Annie's stomach twisted. No, she couldn't give in to fear. Whatever this was, it wanted her to react. It wanted her to be afraid, and she wasn't going to give it that satisfaction. She forced herself to keep walking. Each step was torture, because she could still feel it behind her, moving when she moved, keeping pace with her like a shadow she couldn't escape. She reached the staircase. She wanted to run down toward the front door, toward the safety of the outside world, but she knew something else. That door had been locked before she went to bed, the windows shut tight. There was no way in, which meant, if something was inside the house with her, if it had been in her closet, it hadn't broken in. It had always been here. That realization nearly made her collapse in terror. Her hands gripped the stair railing so tight her knuckles turned white. She took another step and another. Each one felt like she was walking through a nightmare she couldn't wake up from, but then something changed. The air shifted again, that horrible, suffocating feeling of being watched suddenly, lifted, like whatever had been following her had just stopped. She didn't trust it, didn't believe it, but for the first time since she stepped into the hallway, she felt like she could breathe again. She reached the bottom of the stairs. The living room stretched in front of her, dimly lit by the glow of the streetlights outside. Everything looked normal, like it had when she and Jessica went to sleep. But Annie knew better. This wasn't over. She took a step forward and then she saw it. Her stomach dropped. Her breath caught in her throat because there, at the far end of the living room, just barely visible in the darkness, a figure, tall, still, standing right in front of the hallway mirror. But here's the thing, it wasn't facing her. It was facing the mirror, like it was looking at itself, or worse, like it was looking through it. Annie couldn't breathe, couldn't move. She tried to tell herself it was just her reflection, but it wasn't. She could see her own reflection, and it was alone, which meant whatever was standing there. It wasn't her, and then it turned its head not toward her, but toward the mirror, like it wasn't supposed to be seen, like it had just realized that she could see it, and that's when it moved. Not slowly, not cautiously, but suddenly, straight toward the mirror, and just before it reached the glass it disappeared. Annie gasped, stumbling backward. Her whole body was shaking. The house was silent. The presence was gone, but she knew the truth. It wasn't gone. It was somewhere else. And for the first time, Annie wasn't sure if she had been the one being watched, or if she had been the intruder in something else's home. Annie didn't blink, didn't breathe, didn't even know if she was still awake or trapped in some hellish half-dream, because she had just watched something that shouldn't exist, vanish into the mirror. Not into the hallway, not into the shadows, but into the reflection itself. Like the glass had swallowed it whole, she wanted to believe she was imagining things, that her mind was playing tricks on her. But deep down, she knew better, because the house had changed. It felt wrong, like she had stepped out of reality and into something else, something waiting for her to make the next move. Her hands trembled as she slowly backed away from the mirror, careful not to turn her back on it. The air around her felt thicker, heavier, like it was pressing down on her, watching her just as closely as she had watched it. But there was something worse, something she didn't notice right away. The mirror, it wasn't reflecting the room correctly anymore. At first, it seemed normal, the couch, the coffee table, the dim glow of the streetlight outside, but then she saw it, the hallway behind her. Or at least, what was supposed to be the hallway behind her, because in the reflection, the hallway was gone. In its place was something else, something dark, endless, like the entrance to a place that shouldn't exist. And just barely visible in the shadows, a figure, standing far back in the darkness, too deep for her to make out its shape. But it was there, it was waiting, her stomach turned, the room around her was silent. Still, she could feel the pulse in her neck, hammering against her skin like her own body was trying to warn her. She needed to get out, now. But every part of her screamed that if she turned her back on the mirror, if she let it out of her sight, something terrible would happen. She had to move, but she had to do it carefully. Slowly, she edged toward the front door, never taking her eyes off the reflection. The figure in the mirror didn't move, didn't get closer, just stood there. Watching, her fingers brushed against the doorknob, cold, too cold. She twisted it locked. No, 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 no. She tried again, jiggled it. Nothing. Her breathing quickened. It had been unlocked when she went to bed. She knew it had, and that's when she realized she wasn't getting out, not that way. Her only other option was the back door, but to reach it she would have to pass by the mirror. She turned slightly, just for a second, and in that instant the reflection changed. The figure that had been far in the background, it was closer, just a few feet away from the glass now. No sound, no movement, just there, like it had always been there, like it had just been waiting for her to look away. Annie's entire body went cold. She knew what was happening. This thing, whatever it was getting closer every time she looked away. She had to get out, but how? She couldn't keep staring at the mirror forever. And even if she did, what happened when it finally reached the glass? She couldn't wait to find out. She had to move. She made a decision, one chance, one move. Either it worked, or she didn't let herself finish that thought. Annie bolted, not toward the front door, not toward the back, but toward the mirror. If it was playing a game with her, she would break the rules. She lunged forward and grabbed the edge of the frame with both hands. She didn't know what she was expecting, for it to crack, shatter, for the figure inside to lunge forward and pull her in. But the moment she touched it, a sound ripped through the house. Not a whisper, not a laugh, but something else, something worse, something screaming. It wasn't human, it wasn't animal, it was both. And it was coming from inside the mirror. The lights flickered, the house groaned, the air rippled, and then everything went black, like the world had just been swallowed whole. And for the first time, Annie wasn't sure if she was still in the house at all. Annie wasn't sure if she was still standing or breathing or even awake, because everything around her was just gone. No floor beneath her feet, no walls to hold onto, no light, just an endless, suffocating nothing. Her heartbeat was the only sound left, pounding in her ears like a countdown to something she couldn't see. Then a feeling, not a touch, not a grip, but a presence. Something was right there, watching. Close enough to reach out if it wanted to. She couldn't see it, couldn't hear it, but she felt it. It was waiting for her to realize where she was, or worse, what had happened, because Annie wasn't just standing in the dark. She was inside the mirror. Somehow, some way, she had crossed over. She wanted to scream, but she knew it wouldn't help. Because in this place, sound didn't seem to exist. Her breath, silent, her footsteps, muffled. Even her own voice, when she tried to whisper, was swallowed before it could leave her lips. This was not the house anymore, not the world she knew. This was something else, something older, something hungry. She moved forward, or at least she thought she did. There was no way to tell, but with each step, the air around her got colder, thicker, like she was sinking into something she couldn't see. Then a flicker, not light, not a glow, but a shape, far ahead, barely visible, standing in the nothingness. At first, she thought it was her reflection, that maybe, just maybe, she was still facing the mirror. But the more she stared, the more she realized it wasn't copying her. It wasn't moving when she moved. It wasn't tilting its head the way she did. It was just watching. Then it twitched, a sudden, sharp movement, like a marionette whose strings had just been pulled. And then it took a step forward. Annie froze. Her mind screamed at her to run, to wake up, to do something, but her body refused to move because deep down, she already knew the truth. She wasn't alone in here. She never had been, and whatever had been lurking in the mirror, it wasn't a reflection. It was real, and now it was coming for her. Annie's legs wouldn't move. She wanted to run. She needed to run, but her body was locked in place, frozen in a fear so deep it felt like she had been turned to stone, because the thing in front of her, the one that had stepped forward, it wasn't done moving. Slowly, painfully slowly, it took another step, then another. Each movement was wrong, not smooth, not natural, like a puppet being forced to walk by some unseen hand, and as it got closer, Annie realized it wasn't a shadow. It wasn't a trick of the light. It was a person, or at least, it looked like one, same height as her, same shape, and as it moved, she saw something even worse. It was wearing her clothes, her hoodie, her jeans, even her shoes, but the face, there was nothing there, just a blank, featureless void where a face should have been, like someone had carved it out, or like it had never been there in the first place. Annie's breath caught in her throat. This wasn't just something in the mirror, it was her reflection, or at least, what was left of it. She tried to move, to step back, but the second she did, it moved faster. Like it had been waiting for her to react. The space between them shrunk. Annie's heart slammed against her ribs. If it touched her, If it got close enough to reach out, she didn't know what would happen. And she didn't want to find out. She forced herself to move one step back, then another, and the thing, it matched her movements perfectly. Every step she took, it took. Every breath, every shift, every tiny movement, it mirrored her. But now, it was closer. She turned her head, just slightly, looking for any way out, and in that split second, the thing twitched, like it had been waiting for her to look away. When she turned back, it was right in front of her. Inches away, no space left between them. Annie choked on a breath. The air was thick, suffocating, pressing down on her from all sides. The thing didn't move anymore. It didn't need to. It had already won. It had gotten this close without making a sound, and now she was trapped. The space around them shifted, the darkness rippled, and then, for the first time, the thing moved its head, not a normal tilt. Not human, it was too sharp, too sudden, like its neck was snapping into place, and even though it had no face, Annie could feel it looking at her, studying her, like it was deciding what to do next. She couldn't breathe, she couldn't move, and then it reached out, a slow, deliberate motion, a hand, her hand, lifting toward her face, closer, closer, until its fingers were just inches from her skin. And in that moment, a sound ripped through the silence, a whisper, low, garbled, like something speaking from inside a broken radio, and it said one word, a name, her name, spoken in her own voice, and that's when she realized it wasn't just her reflection. It was taking her place, and if she didn't stop it, she would never leave this place again. Annie felt like she was sinking, like the ground beneath her wasn't solid anymore, like she was being pulled down, but her feet weren't moving. She wasn't falling, she was just disappearing, and the thing in front of her, her reflection, or what was left of it, it wasn't just standing there anymore. It was changing, shifting, becoming more solid, more real. Its blank face was filling in, the shape of lips, the outline of a nose, the curve of eyes that, oh God, they were her eyes, perfect copies, staring back at her with something she couldn't explain, something wrong, because there was no life in them, no warmth, just a cold, empty hunger. And as the thing's face became clearer, Annie felt something crawl up her spine. Because something else was happening, something far worse. Her own body, her actual body, was fading. Her hands were turning see-through. Her legs felt lighter, like she was becoming a ghost in her own skin. And the thing, it was becoming her, piece by piece, taking her features, taking her place, like it was stepping into the world she was being erased from. Annie's mind was screaming. She had to fight. She had to move, but how? The thing was already too close. It had already started the exchange, and the worst part, she could feel it, not just on her skin, but inside, like it was digging into her bones. Like it was reaching into the deepest part of her and pulling, and suddenly a memory flashed in her mind, the first time she had looked into the mirror that night. The first time she had noticed that tiny, almost unnoticeable delay in her reflection. That was the moment it had started. That was when she had let it in. And now it was too late. Her body wasn't hers anymore. Her voice wasn't hers anymore. And when she tried to scream, nothing came out. Because she wasn't real anymore. She was just a reflection, and the thing that had taken her place, it was already walking away. Already stepping out of the mirror, already living her life, and Annie was trapped, left behind, just another forgotten shadow in the glass, watching, waiting, and hungry, because sooner or later, someone else would look into this mirror, and when they did, she would be ready to take their place. Annie pressed her hands against the glass, but it wasn't glass anymore. It was solid, cold, unbreakable. She tried to scream, but no sound came out, no voice, no breath, nothing. She wasn't in her room anymore. She was inside the mirror, and on the other side, standing in the real world, was the thing that stole her face. It moved around her room like it had always belonged there, picking up her phone, stretching her arms, rolling her shoulders like it was getting used to wearing her skin, and then it laughed, a perfect copy of her laugh. Her heart pounded, but it didn't feel like a heart anymore, just an empty echo inside a body that wasn't real. She turned, desperate, looking for a way out, but she wasn't alone. The darkness inside the mirror shifted. Shapes moved, and then eyes, hundreds of them, watching her, reflections that weren't hers. People, trapped, just like her. Some of them looked ancient, their bodies faded, barely visible like they had been here for centuries. Others still had shape, but their faces were blank, erased. She wasn't the first. She wasn't even close to the first, and now, she was one of them, the forgotten ones, the stolen, trapped in the reflection. While something else walked around in their bodies, Annie stumbled back, her mind racing. She couldn't stay here, she couldn't, because if she did she would fade too, she would disappear. She spun back to the mirror's surface, slamming her hands against it, trying to break through, but all she could do was watch. Watch herself put on her jacket, watch herself pick up her keys, watch herself walk to the door. The thing turned back, looking directly at her. For a second, it smiled, and then it turned off the light. And Annie's world went black. Inside the mirror, the whispers started, low, crawling over her skin. The others were speaking, and their voices weren't human anymore. She couldn't understand the words, but she understood the meaning. Give up, let go, fade, but Annie wasn't like them. She wouldn't let go. She refused to be another lost soul, and as she stood there, surrounded by shadows that used to be people, she made a promise. She was going to get out. No matter what it took, no matter what she had to do, even if it meant becoming just as terrifying as the thing that stole her life, even if it meant waiting, because one day, someone else would stand in front of this mirror. And when they did, she would be ready. Time didn't exist inside the mirror. There were no days, no nights, just endless darkness. Annie didn't know how long she had been trapped. Minutes, hours, years. She was losing herself. The reflections around her had no names. No voices, just blank faces and empty eyes, and Annie was afraid, terrified, that soon she would become one of them, a shadow, a forgotten thing. She couldn't let that happen, but how do you fight when you don't even have a body anymore? Her fingers pressed against the mirror's surface, the cold biting into her skin. Except she didn't have skin, not really, just the memory of it. She watched the thing wearing her body live her life, going to work, laughing with friends, looking just like her, but it wasn't her. She was here, trapped, and no one knew. No one even noticed. The horror of it sank in. The thing had won. It had stolen her identity so perfectly that her life kept moving without her. She wanted to scream. She wanted to rip at the glass, tear it apart, break through, and then she saw it. A crack, small, barely visible, a tiny, jagged flaw in the mirror's surface. Her breath hitched. Not that she was breathing anymore, but still she felt it. A weakness, a way out. She pressed her fingers against it, feeling a strange resistance. It wasn't much, but it was something. If she could make the crack bigger, if she could break the mirror from the inside, maybe, just maybe, she could escape, but she wasn't alone. The others had noticed her, the forgotten ones, the erased. They surrounded her now, their movements slow, eerie, unnatural. She could feel them watching, their presence pressing against her like a weight she couldn't shake off. And then, they spoke, not with voices, not with words, but inside her head. Annie. The sound crawled up her spine, a whisper made of cold air and shadows. You can't leave. She clenched her jaw. Watch me. Their whispers grew louder. They weren't stopping her. They weren't trying to keep her trapped. They were warning her. Don't do this. You don't know what's on the other side. You think it's just your life waiting for you. You think you can just take it back. It doesn't work like that. Annie's fingers tightened against the crack in the glass. She didn't care. She didn't care if there were rules. She didn't care if she was making a mistake. She had to try. She had to get out, because if she stayed here any longer, she wouldn't just be trapped. She would become one of them, and she refused. With all the strength she had left, Annie pushed. The crack spread, and on the other side of the mirror, for the first time since she had been trapped, she saw something change. The thing wearing her face, it stopped. Its head snapped up, and for the first time its smile vanished. Like it knew, like it could feel her, like it realized Annie wasn't gone. Annie was coming back. The crack in the mirror was spreading, slowly, unevenly, but it was growing. Annie pressed harder, her fingers digging into the fractured surface, feeling a strange resistance, like the mirror itself was fighting back. The forgotten ones whispered behind her, their voices twisting in the empty space. "You're making a mistake. You don't know what's on the other side." But she didn't care. She didn't belong here. She was still alive. And she was taking back her life. She pushed harder, harder, until suddenly the mirror gave. A thin shard broke loose from the surface, sharp as a knife, cold as death. Her breath hitched. For the first time, something inside this prison was real. Something solid, a weapon. Her fingers curled around it, gripping it tight, and as she turned, she saw them, the others. They were closer now. Their bodies were half, faded, barely holding form, but their eyes, those empty, soulless eyes, were locked on her. And then, they moved, not walking, not running, gliding, like shadows flickering across a wall. They surrounded her, no escape, no way out, and that's when she realized they weren't here to stop her. They were hungry. They had been trapped for so long that they had forgotten what it felt like to be alive, and Annie was still whole, still new, still human. If she stayed here much longer, if she hesitated for even a second, they would devour her. And she would become just like them, a shadow, a forgotten thing. She tightened her grip on the shard and turned back to the crack in the mirror. She had to go now, but then the whole world shuddered. A deep, unnatural vibration shook the air, like the sound of glass about to shatter. The thing wearing her body felt it too. Annie could see it through the mirror. Her reflection wasn't still anymore. It was looking around, panicked, it was afraid. That's when she knew. She wasn't just breaking out. She was breaking everything. The space between here and the real world was coming apart. The thing in her body wasn't just an imposter. It was part of something bigger, something ancient, something that had been doing this for centuries. And now, Annie had ruined everything. The whispers around her turned into screams. The shadows recoiled, clawing at the air like they were burning. The mirror groaned. Deep cracks splintered outward in every direction, and then it collapsed. The glass shattered into 1,000 pieces, and Annie fell back into the real world. But she didn't land on her bedroom floor. She didn't wake up in her bed. She was somewhere else, somewhere. Wrong, and the thing that had stolen her face, it was waiting for her. It wasn't done yet, and neither was she. Annie hit the ground hard, but it wasn't her bedroom floor. It wasn't soft carpet or even cold wood. It was damp, sticky. Something was wrong. Her hands pressed against the surface, and a sickening realization set in. It was flesh. The ground beneath her wasn't a floor at all. It was skin. She gagged, scrambling backward, her breath coming in sharp, panicked gasps. But the more she moved, the more the floor moved with her, a pulse. A faint, rhythmic heartbeat. Her stomach twisted. Where the hell was she? This wasn't the mirror world. This wasn't even the real world. This was something in between. The air was thick, humid, alive. The walls around her weren't solid. They were breathing, and the worst part, she wasn't alone. Something was moving in the distance, slow, deliberate, a shadow shifting in the dim, reddish light. Annie's body tensed as the thing stepped forward. And she saw it. It was her, but not the imposter, not the thing that had stolen her face. It was something worse, a version of herself that had been here for centuries. Her skin was stretched tight, unnaturally smooth like wax. Her eyes were hollow pits, blacker than anything Annie had ever seen, and when she smiled, it wasn't human, it was wrong. "You shouldn't have come here," the thing whispered, but the words didn't come from its mouth. They came from everywhere, the walls, the floor, the very air. Annie ran. She didn't know where she was going. She just ran. The fleshy ground shifted beneath her feet, rippling like a living organism, but she didn't stop. The whispers grew louder, distorting, twisting into a horrific symphony of voices. Some she recognized, some she didn't. She heard her mother, her best friend, her own voice, all of them speaking at once. You don't belong here. You can't escape. You're already dead. No, no, she wasn't. She refused to believe that. Up ahead, she saw something. A light, weak but flickering, a way out. She pushed forward, lungs burning, heart pounding, and then the hands burst from the walls. Hundreds of them, pale, clawed, desperate, they grabbed at her clothes, her hair, her skin, trying to pull her down, back into the flesh, back into them. Annie screamed, thrashing, kicking, fighting. But the hands were strong, and she was tired. Her legs buckled. Her body was sinking. The flesh was swallowing her whole, pulling her into the very walls, and then, just as she felt herself disappearing, something grabbed her wrist. Not the hands, not the voices, something real. She looked up, and there, through the flickering light, she saw a face, her face, not the monster, not the imposter, her real reflection, the real Annie. Reaching through the last shard of mirror left between worlds, Annie didn't hesitate. She lunged. The flesh tore away, screaming as she ripped herself from its grasp, and then she was falling, through light, through shadow, through something in between, and when she opened her eyes, she was back, lying on her bedroom floor. Her body ached, her hands were trembling, but she was alive. She sat up, gasping, vision spinning, and then she saw it. The mirror, it was shattered, a perfect gaping hole where her reflection used to be, and staring back at her. Through the broken glass was the thing, the imposter, the other Annie, still smiling, still watching, and it whispered, in a voice that sounded just like hers, "See you soon." Annie couldn't breathe. The thing in the mirror, her reflection but not her, wasn't just staring anymore. It was moving, slowly, impossibly, like a glitch in reality. The broken glass around the frame didn't stop it. It didn't seem to care that the mirror was shattered. It was still there, still watching. Her heart pounded so hard it felt like it was going to break through her ribs. She backed away, one step, two. But the thing in the mirror didn't. It stayed where it was, still smiling that awful, stretched-out grin, like it knew something she didn't, like it was waiting. A whisper slithered through the room. Not a voice, but a feeling, a presence. Annie's stomach twisted, the air shifted. The light in her room, once dim and flickering, now seemed darker. The walls stretched, shadows pooling in the corners, moving in ways that shouldn't have been possible. And then crack, the sound of glass splintering, not just from the mirror, from everywhere. Annie's entire world fractured, the walls, the ceiling, the air itself, splitting apart like a reflection breaking into 1,000 pieces. And through those cracks, she saw something else, something she wasn't meant to see. A place that shouldn't exist, and it was pulling her in. She dug her nails into the floor, clawing, screaming, fighting. But the force was too strong. She was being dragged, sucked back into something worse than the mirror world, a place beyond reflections, beyond human understanding. She didn't know how she knew this. But she did. She felt it. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was bigger. The mirror, the imposter, the hands in the walls. They were all part of something greater, something that had existed long before she was born, something that would exist long after she was gone, and now it had found her, it had claimed her. She screamed, she fought, but the mirror, the cracks, the impossible world beyond it, was already swallowing her whole. And then, just as her body was about to be consumed, it stopped. Everything went still, the pulling, the force, the whispers. Gone. Annie was shaking, her breath coming in ragged, uneven gasps. She was still in her room. The mirror was still shattered. The cracks in reality had vanished, but something was off, terribly, horribly off. The silence wasn't normal. It was wrong. She stood up slowly, her legs barely holding her weight. The air was heavy, thick, like the moment before a storm, and then she heard it. A sound so soft, so quiet that she almost thought she imagined it, breathing, not hers, something else. It was behind her. No, that was impossible. She was alone. She had made it back. Right, her body stiffened. Cold sweat dripped down her spine. She turned around, and that's when she saw it. The mirror wasn't just broken. It was empty, completely. No reflection, no imposter, nothing. Her stomach dropped. She lifted a shaking hand. She waved it in front of the glass, but nothing moved, nothing at all. It took a second for her brain to register what was happening. Her reflection was gone, and then the air behind her shifted. Something moved. Annie didn't have time to turn, didn't have time to scream. A cold, dry hand clamped over her mouth. The last thing she heard, a voice that sounded just like hers, whispering in her ear, "I told you, see you soon," and then darkness. Annie wasn't sure if she was awake or dreaming. She was somewhere else now, not her room, not anywhere she recognized, just darkness, an endless void stretching in all directions. Cold air pressed against her skin. It smelled damp, stale, like a place that had been rotting for centuries. Her body felt heavy, like she was sinking, like something was pulling her down. She tried to move, but her limbs barely responded. Her breath came in short, ragged gasps, and then a sound. At first, she thought it was water, a slow, rhythmic drip, drip, drip. But as it got closer, she realized it wasn't water at all. It was footsteps. Soft, barefoot, someone, or something, was walking toward her. The air grew thicker. The footsteps slowed, and then they stopped, right in front of her. She couldn't see them, but she could feel them. The way the air shifted. The way the silence stretched, unnatural and suffocating, and then, out of the darkness, a hand. It shot forward, grabbing her wrist with a grip so tight it sent a bolt of pain up her arm. Annie screamed, but the sound barely left her lips before the hand yanked her forward. She stumbled, her vision blurring, and suddenly she was back in her room, back in front of the mirror, back in the same terrible, suffocating silence. But something was different. The mirror, it was still shattered. The room still looked normal, but it wasn't. She wasn't. Annie took a step forward, her heart hammering. She lifted a trembling hand to her face. Her skin felt wrong, too smooth, too cold, like it wasn't really hers. She turned to the mirror and froze. Her reflection was back, but it wasn't moving. It was just standing there, staring, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, and then it blinked, but Annie didn't. Her stomach twisted. She took a step back. Her reflection did not. It just kept staring. That wide, empty-eyed stare. Annie's breath hitched. And then it smiled, a slow, stretching grin that wasn't hers, a grin too wide, too wrong. Her blood ran cold. She turned away from the mirror, trying to steady her breathing. This wasn't real. She had to be hallucinating. But then a whisper, "You took too long." Her entire body locked up. She turned back to the mirror, but now there was nothing. Just her empty room staring back at her. Her reflection was gone. She took a shaky breath. Maybe it was over. Maybe she had imagined it. Maybe then a click, soft, almost unnoticeable, but it was there, coming from behind her. She turned, her pulse skyrocketing, and that's when she saw it. Her closet door, it was open, just a crack, but she knew for a fact she hadn't opened it. Annie's breath caught in her throat. Her mind screamed at her to run, but her body wouldn't move, because through the gap in the door she saw something. Something standing there, watching, not a shadow, not a trick of the light. It was real, and then it stepped out, tall, too tall, lanky arms hanging at its sides, its head tilted, studying her. Annie couldn't breathe. She couldn't scream. She could only stare, and then, in the dim light, she saw its face. Or rather, she saw hers, twisted, wrong, that same wide, too-stretched grin from the mirror. Its eyes, her eyes, were locked onto her. And then it took a step closer, then another, slow, unrushed, like it knew. Like it had all the time in the world. Annie's mind raced. She had to move, had to run. But before she could, it whispered, low, soft, "This body fits better." And then everything went black, suffocating, unforgiving. Annie felt like she was sinking, not into water, not into air, into something deeper, something alive. She couldn't see, couldn't move, couldn't even scream. Because she wasn't inside herself anymore. She was somewhere else, and she knew exactly who was wearing her skin. Morning came, a bright, quiet, peaceful morning. Sunlight streamed through the window. The house was still, calm, and then a soft creak. The closet door eased open, and Annie stepped out, or at least, the thing that looked like her, same face, same hair, same voice, but not the same eyes. They were just a little too bright, a little too hungry. She **** stretched, rolling its shoulders like trying on a new coat. Then it turned and smiled at the mirror. It wasn't empty anymore. Now, inside the glass, Annie was the one staring out. Why? Died? Silent? Trapped? She raised her hands, pounded on the glass, tried to scream, but no sound came out. She could only watch as the thing walked away, watch as it picked up her phone, watched as it read her messages. Watched as it became her. The doorbell rang, a voice called from outside. Her best friend, Annie, you home? Annie, the real Annie, screamed. She banged on the mirror with all her strength, but the thing just smiled. And then, with a quiet, casual grin, it walked to the door, unlocked it, and let them in.